We'd like to start off our night by going through some of the values that we find important here at Recovery Church. All are welcome. That's enough said. I don't care if you're in $1 million mansion or in a tent. You're all welcome. We do recover. It takes time. It's a process. It doesn't happen overnight. But we do recover. Jesus is our hope. Without Jesus, we're pretty much hopeless. The Bible is the inspired word of God. With all that together, He gets us through this. Faith without works is dead. If we don't put our works and our faith into things, it's useless. We are a part of a greater community. First of all, a lot of us, most of us, are in God's community, which is the best community to be in. We work the 12 steps here because we found over the years they work. Plain and simple. We love the spirit of rotation, trying to get everyone to do different jobs because not one person runs it except for God. Being with prayer, that connects us with Him. Talking with Him, being with Him every day, that works so well for us. Being raw, open, honest, transparent, everything you can be. You have to be raw. We have to be truthful in what we do. Also in this program, we like the discipleship because we have to disciple somebody so you could turn around and give what was given to you. Finally, we'll be known for our love. And something I've learned today, God was talking to me earlier, and He said, everything that you are spitting out, everything that you are going through and working through me is all the stuff that I told God that He couldn't do through me. And that meant a lot to me. Years ago, you couldn't get me to get up here in front and talk to people. But I do it now because I told him he couldn't do it. So that's why He's got me up here. All right, Mr. Lyle, would you like to come up here and introduce our guest today?
Thanks, Danny. A few quick things. First of all, it's great to be back. Had a great time away, but it's also great to be back. I got some guests here. Jane was actually with me in Haiti, so welcome to all the newcomers. Anybody who's at home joining us for the first time, I love what Danny said, the spirit of rotation. I was gone for 2 weeks, and quite frankly, I wasn't missed, and that's a beautiful thing. So it's great that we have so many people that can plug into all the different positions and do all the different things. I do have, and we are a self-sustaining church. What we do, Danny's going to be passing a plate. Nobody here takes a penny. We're all 100% volunteer-based. That money goes into some of the things we do for you, which at the end we'll tell you. We've got free life recovery Bibles for anybody who wants one. We've got free books called Food and Behavior, which talks about how what you eat affects how you act, think, act, and feel. We do have a meal waiting for you after you hear the message tonight, and a few other goodies that we do. So that's really what it goes into, and just sort of the cost of keeping things moving. So we do appreciate whatever God puts on your heart to share with us through that. We promise you it'll go to good use, and we are. I'm very well known for being frugal. I like to say cheap. My wife prefers I use the word frugal. So again, thank you for being here, and thank you for joining us online. We do have some folks joining from all over the country as well as some other countries, and that's a beautiful thing. So tonight I have the incredible pleasure of introducing, at the end, the last Saturday of each month is our testimony night. And so we have a biblically based 12-step message throughout the month, and then the last one is a testimony of what God has done in somebody's life. And this one in particular obviously means a lot to me. It's my wife, Darlyn. And I can tell you that what you see is what you get. The heart that you see is real. If anybody would know her faults and weaknesses, it would be me. I live with her. She knows mine. Let's talk about mine rather than hers because there's a lot more to talk about. No, she is truly the loving individual that she appears to be. She is that angel from heaven. She has been a real godsend in my life, and so she's very well loved, which I think you'll see how many people are following online tonight for that very reason. All that said, my beautiful, wonderful wife, in whom I'm well pleased, Darlyn Fried.
That's me crying before I even say anything. Woo, wow. I have to tell you, the Lord gave me all the music for today, and I tell you, I don't know if it blessed you, but it surely blessed me.
Good choice.
It's great to see a lot of faces here that I haven't seen in a long time, and here we go. Hang on. Make sure I have tissue down there, okay? Thank you, honey. It's a pleasure to be here and to share my testimony with you. I'm going to start out by saying that from the 3rd grade through high school, I would never get up and speak and give an oral report. I did it once, and I did it so fast that every student and the teacher were all laughing. And the teacher said, "You said it so fast, we couldn't understand a thing you said. You need to do it again." I said, "No, I'm not doing it again." And I refused to do it until I got out of high school. And I was in my, probably in my early 30s was the first time that I would speak in front of anybody, because I had so much fear in me. And growing up, I was raised by my grandparents. My mother got pregnant at 16, and her and my dad got married. He was 19, he was in the Marines. Their marriage didn't last very long. My mom moved back up north to Washington and took me with her, and within a few months my dad told her, "I want you back, please come home." And we went back to Miami, and the day after we got there, she was served with legal papers from his parents. Okay, so I'm very used to that. That happens all the time. Anyway, so she was served with papers, and my grandparents proceeded to take her to court, and they ended up getting custody of me when I was less than 2 years old. So my grandparents were both alcoholics. My mother's father was an alcoholic, and that's why she wanted to get married and get out of her home, because of the abuse that she suffered at his hands. So I was raised with my grandparents. My grandparents were very well off. My grandfather owned a loan company in Miami, and my grandmother was a stay-at-home grandmother. You know, she had someone clean her house, and, you know, we were comfortable. And the only way that they knew how to love was to give me things. They never showed affection. My grandmother only showed affection when she was really intoxicated, and it was like that, I love, like, and it's like, no, I don't think so. So she, you know, I know, being a parent, that we do the best we can with what we've been given. And growing up in that household wasn't easy. I minimized everything for up until probably about 10 years ago. I said my life was great, you know, I had everything I ever wanted, and if I asked for it, I got it, and didn't know that that wasn't the way it was everywhere else. So growing up, it was hard to finally realize that just because I want something doesn't mean I can have it. So that was a hard lesson to learn, but I have learned it with my frugal husband. There were many times with my grandparents. I learned to drink at a very young age. I had my own little cocktail glass with little red roosters on it, and I was forced to drink champagne every holiday. Whenever we went out to dinner, which was probably once a week or twice a week, I always had to have a Shirley Temple, because they always had their cocktails. So I was kind of taught to do that, you know, and every weekend it was a party at my grandparents' house. All the dirty old men would come and get loaded and stay all night and, you know, party till the morning. And I was raised around a lot of people with no boundaries and no respect and no protection. So after I, you know, realized and started working on myself, I realized how many things I wasn't taught as a child. I wasn't taught self-control. I wasn't taught to be able to have boundaries for myself. You know, I remember as a child going into the bathroom and coming out, and back in the old days, we used to have metal zippers, you know, and I remember coming out of the bathroom and I couldn't get my zipper up, and some gentleman, I don't know, I don't even remember who it was, my grandparents said, will you just zip up her shorts for her? And he zipped my shorts up, caught my skin, and I was like, I started crying, and they're all, ah, ha, ha, isn't that funny, you know? And it's just the way they lived, you know, they would tell me things that weren't true. They would tell me, for example, we went away one weekend to the Keys. We loved to go. They loved to fish, and we went there quite a bit. And I came home, and my house looked really funny on the outside. And they said, "Oh, we had a tornado came and you know damaged our home on the outside." And I went, "Oh my gosh, you're kidding!" And they go, "No, it's terrible." So I was, you know, I was like, "Wow!" And my neighbor ended up telling me that's not true. It was just they power washed it. They wanted to, you know, paint their house, and they power washed their house. I didn't think much of it, you know, for a long time. But the truth was never told in our home. I never knew what the truth was. I never knew feelings. You know, I wasn't allowed. I was from the generation, you are seen and not heard. I'm sure a lot of people remember that. So I wasn't able to express my feelings. I wasn't able to, there was no affection. The only time I was ever shown affection was if my grandmother was really, really intoxicated, or if I was in my grandfather's bed. I grew up knowing that I slept with my grandfather. I didn't know until I was much later on in years, in my or probably in my late 20s, that when my grandfather ended up getting cancer and passing away. I was 12 years old, and I didn't like him at all. When he would get drunk, I would get between him and my grandmother because they'd be fighting, and I would get in front of it and say, "You're not going to hurt my grandmother." And so I know that when he passed, I didn't like him. He wasn't someone that I was fond of or that I liked. And I went to visit my grandfather's secretary, who worked for him for like the whole time he had his business, and I was looking into my childhood and in therapy, trying to get my life together. And I said to her, "Do you know anything about that?" And she got this look on her face that was like, "Oh, I don't know if I want to know the answer to this question." And she said to me, "Yeah, he would tell everybody that you slept with him because you loved him so much." And I knew when I heard that, I said, that is just not true. And it was just something that everybody knew about. And I've been in therapy a long time, and I've worked on some of my issues and trying to get through some of that stuff. And actually, I just went back to therapy again for some other things. And if you have never been to therapy, do yourself a favor and go. It's awesome. It's painful, but it works. So anyway, that's my little thing on that. I didn't realize how damaged I was. I didn't realize that I wasn't taught anything as a child. I was the caretaker. My grandfather developed cancer on his tongue, and I was the one that was putting bandages on his wounds and taking care of him. You know, I was the one sleeping in the bedroom with him. My grandmother was sleeping in the other room. Most of my adult life, until probably when I was 32, I was petrified to be alone at home at night. As soon as the sun went down, I was locking the doors. I was putting chairs under the doors, stacking books on top of them, because I was just so fearful of being home alone, especially in the dark. There were times as a child, I would wake up in the middle of the night and I'd call out to them, and then there was nothing, and I'd call out, and then I'd start to cry, and then I would hear them coming down the street from their friend's house, having gone down there while I was asleep. So I grew up in a home that brought up in me so much fear. Also, my self-esteem, I didn't have any. I was always told that I was just like my mom, or I was just like my dad, and I grew up with not thinking very much of myself, not feeling like it was important. I had a lot of rejection because when my parents divorced and I was taken in by my grandparents, I didn't see my parents that much. They would call and say they were coming, and then nobody would show up. And there were times when my dad, who would come and visit on occasion, and whenever he did come, he would bring a female companion with him. And when he would get there, you know, I'd be all excited to see him, and he'd be spending time with the girl that he was with at the time, you know, cuddling on the couch and all that thing. So I really felt a lot of rejection growing up also. And my dad was married 7 times. So that's another whole testimony in itself. So during when I was like 11, 12, my grandfather got sick again and had to go back in the hospital, and he ended up passing away from cancer. So it was just me and my grandmother. And my grandmother and I didn't get along either. She was a worse alcoholic, if that can be possible, than my grandfather was. She was like devastated that he had passed, and she just wanted to die, and that's all she would talk about. I just want to die, you know, he's gone, you know. And I'm thinking, but you didn't even spend time with them, you know, you slept in a different room than him, you know, you weren't even together. They never showed affection at all. So in my when I became a young girl, I developed very, very early in life. I used to have friends over. My grandfather built a pool, and we had all the neighbors over, and I never thought anything of it, but we used to skinny dip all the time. I thought everybody that had a pool skinny dipped, but come to find out that that's not necessarily true. Comments were always made, you know, comments were made about my development. My friend told me years later that my father and my grandfather would sit there and talk about that kind of stuff. I don't remember it at all. But I know that the way that I lived my life for many, many years reflects the abuse that I received at their hands, and the lack of protection that I received I didn't receive from my grandmother. But I've learned that I know that they did the best with what they had, what they were capable of doing. So I went on my first date when I think I was like 12 or 13. My grandmother let me go out with the neighborhood boy, and we went bowling, which is something I love to do. But that was like the beginning of it. And then I was dating boys older than me. I was very promiscuous. I thought, you know, that sex was love, and I would be with anyone who would show me any kind of attention whatsoever. And, you know, I say that, and it's like, I used to carry so much shame about that. You know, I mean, I mean, if anybody showed me attention, I was like, so available. And I realize why now. I was so desperate to be loved. And I didn't know I was never taught anything different. And I've learned that I'm special and I'm important, and that I pray so much for the younger generation, because things are so different now, and I have a heart for that. And I know what it's like to go through abuse and to be beaten down as a person, and my husband still a lot of times will say, stop beating yourself up. You know, it's like you get into these habits and these things that you just do. And my language, I had a filthy mouth. I mean, I could cuss it with the best of them, and it became a habit. And I used words that I don't use anymore, but it was a habit, and I thought it was fine, and I didn't think badly of it. For many years, I wore a necklace that spelled the word "a female dog" on it, and I wore that, and I wondered why I didn't have any friends. I didn't feel comfortable in my own skin. I didn't think anybody liked me. I didn't think I had anything to offer anybody, And I felt that way for a very long time. My grandmother continued her drinking. One day we had gone fishing, and over in Everglades City, and we used to love to go with this guy. He used to fish, and he'd stop and pull the boat over and make fry the fish right on the boat and make hush puppies, and it was, oh my gosh, it was so wonderful. And I'd always drink a 6-pack on the way over, and then I'd be good for the rest of the day. So we got home, she was loaded, I was pretty well done, and we went to bed, and I was dreaming that I was smelling smoke. And I'm dreaming I'm smelling smoke, so I opened my eyes and I went, whoa, I ain't dreaming. And I put the light on, and I couldn't see anything in front of me. It was just pure white. So I got up and grabbed my dog and went in there and woke her up. She was asleep, and we were able to get outside, and I called the fire department. They came, and our whole house was destroyed on the inside because she was drinking and smoking, and she dropped a cigarette in her chair, and the whole house had to be, it was terrible. Fires are not good. And that was only the first fire she had. She had another one when I had gotten married, which was not the best idea I ever had. I was 20, on my 25th birthday, I was freaking out because I thought I was going to be an old maid, because all my friends were married, they all were having babies, and I was single, and I didn't even have a prospect. So I was thinking I was going to be an old maid, but I thank the Lord that I am not an old maid. I'm old, but I'm not an old maid. So I got to remember where I was at with all that. I do that so often. I'll be on a thought, and then something will come in here, and I'll go running on that, and then I go, what was I talking about? What was I talking about?
Fire, second fire.
Oh yeah, second. Oh yeah, I was living next door in the second fire with my first husband, and she calls me. The house is on fire. I go, well, get out of there. She's in her bedroom, you know. So I called the fire department. I run over there. I put my hand on the knob, and the thing was so hot. I opened up the door, and the flames were just shooting up the couch, up to the wall. And I was like, oh my goodness. And she was still in her bedroom. And I heard the officer drove up, and the dispatcher was on the phone, and she goes, did you get her out? I mean, the terror in her voice, worried that this woman was in her house getting, burning up. It was awful. So we got her out of the house, and then she had to come and stay with me next door for a little while. Anyway, we had another fire after that, and
Oh my gosh.
yeah, it's true. You can't make this stuff up. But anyway, I did get married. My first marriage was to a gentleman that was very good to me, was like a father that I never had. And we did not have a good marriage. No communication. I was a golf widow. So I learned to play golf. But then I played with my friends, he played with his friends. So anyway, after 10 years of marriage, I finally had started therapy and started getting strong enough to be able to realize that it was not a healthy thing to be in. I wasn't happy. He wasn't happy. I got a job, I got my insurance, and we paid off all our bills, and then I said, I have to do this. And it was the first single thing I did that was healthy for me, really. And we got divorced, and I partied hardy after that for a while. I drank, and every day I'd go to work, I'd go across the street to the little bar, I'm only gonna have one, and then somebody would buy me one. I go, well, I gotta buy them one, so then I buy them one. And then it got to, I'll just have a 6-pack before I go home. And then I go home and I'd hit the tap. I had a keg, I bought myself a keg, because I was single and I could do whatever I wanted now. So, because he didn't drink at all, and I drank enough for both of us. But the drinking didn't stop, and I partied and kept drinking, and I met this man, and of course, I had a really bad picker. Every man that I met was not healthy. They weren't, because I wasn't healthy. And I met this man, and ended up, let me go back a little bit. During my first marriage, I wanted to have a child. And I went through everything to have a child. I went through fertility, I went through surgeries, I went through everything. and we never were able to conceive. So doctor said, I don't think you can have any children. So I said, okay. So that was that. I finally moved on from that, and then I met this man after I got divorced, shortly thereafter, and I got pregnant. I was like, whoa, what? I can't get pregnant. Surprise! But it was a desire of my heart from when I was a young girl. I would fantasize, I'd play with my Barbies, and I always said that if I ever had a child, I would never do to her what was done to me. The morning before I found out that I had taken a test and they said it was positive, and I didn't believe it. I got another one. I took another one. I said, something's wrong. These things don't work. I called my friend who was a nurse. These tests don't work. She goes, oh, no, they're very accurate. I went, no. So the next morning I went and had a blood test. And as I'm sitting there drinking a beer, my friend said, you are drinking apple juice, aren't you? I said, no, I'm having a beer. Called me up about 11:30 and said, congratulations. And I went, oh, thank you. And I ripped all my acrylic fingernails off because I said, I won't be needing these anymore, and ripped those things off. So as of that's my sobriety date. I said that if I ever got pregnant, I would never drink. And I haven't had a drink since that day. Thank you. I want to talk now more. I want to talk more about what God has done for me. Then I want to share more stories about things that have happened to me, or things that I've gone through. I didn't know what love looked like, really. I mean, true love. I did not know what it looked like. And when I became a Christian, one of the first things I was told by a group of people that I was with that were like mentoring me was, you have to trust God. And I go, you want me to trust a man? You got to be crazy. There's no way, And they said, no, you got to trust him. And I said, well, I'll try. And I started going to this very charismatic church, which was something that I had never experienced before. The tongues and the I don't know. It was wild to me, and I didn't understand it. But I knew when I went there and I heard them singing, I would just start weeping. Just like I'd be bawling. I'd go, what is going on? And God started working on me at that church, and I got saved at that church. I got baptized at that church, and I started my journey with the Lord. I've had to really pay attention to my behavior, because it's very easy for me to slip back into some of my old ways. And I want to share with you a few things. Just bear with me. God has done some really awesome things in my life. My favorite one is the one that he did with Lyle. And, I had finally realized that I had to quit looking for love in the wrong places and stop looking for men, and to focus to let the Lord be my father and my husband. So I started to do that. And I took the time that I needed to find out who I was, what I wanted to do with my life, and because of the fact that my daughter's father rejected us and abandoned us the day I found out I was pregnant, I wanted something better for her. So started going to church, started trying to do things different. The Lord started doing things, working in me. I used to be extremely critical of people. I was. Thank you. How did you know that? Sorry. I was very critical and judgmental of people. If I didn't like you, you knew it, and there was no doubt about it. I was raised in a very judgmental household, you know. There was a lot of shaming and judging and things of that sort. So I've learned that where we grow up and how we're raised is how we kind of end up, unless we do something about it. And I did. I started working on myself and trying to be a better person, and being a Christian, and listening and praying and talking to God, and doing all the things that you need to do, that I needed to do, to undo all the stuff that was done. And it doesn't end. It never ends. You know, we do better, and then, you know, you can't stand still, or you start going backwards. At least that's been my experience. So I started going to church, spending time in God's Word, and whatever was suggested to me by this group of people, I did it, no questions asked. And it was really bizarre, because I never did anything I was told to do. But I trusted them, and I did everything they suggested, and my life started changing. I wasn't living in constant fear. I wasn't as judgmental. I had more peace in my life. I never had any peace in my life. I was always afraid of everything, and I was also afraid to be alone. So when the Lord told me, you know, you just need to focus on this right now and not worry about all that other stuff. And that was hard, because I had never been like alone. I always had to have somebody in my life to feel whole or to feel complete. And I went through that time of being alone, and I grew a lot, and spent time with my daughter. And so I started thinking, well, maybe I'll go to I ended up going to a new church. I said, well, maybe I'll go to the singles group. Maybe I can meet somebody there. So I went to the singles group, and I said, this ain't happening. I could tell. And God had to remind me, slow down, you know, take care of yourself, do what you got to do. So I did, and I went to the group for a while. I said, no, this isn't going to work. So I started going to the church on a regular basis. They had a group there that was just some men who were in treatment. That we went to the same Sunday school class. I brought the clients that I worked with who had disabilities and had substance abuse issues. I brought them to the church, and the guy that was running it was this crazy pastor, Jerry Weaver. He was a hoot and a half, and he was in recovery, and it was just a fabulous time. And I got to know some of the guys in the group, and I'm sitting in there one day, and I'm looking around the room. I'm looking, and then all of a sudden I hear, what about Lyle? Ooh, what about Lyle? So I mentioned to the pastor's wife, you know, what about Lyle? Tell me about Lyle, you know. And they said, oh, he's a great guy, all this stuff. So I got brave, and I said, okay, I'm gonna ask him out for coffee. But I knew for sure he'd say no before I even asked him. But he said yes, and we went out to coffee, and he shared his testimony with me. And we went out for lunch, we went out for dinner, we went out for breakfast the next morning, we went out for dinner the next night, we went out to breakfast the next day, lunch and dinner. And 4 days after our first date, he told me, while I'm driving the car, I'm going to marry you. Or you're going to marry me, one of those. And I went, you know. And by me being obedient to what God told me, blessed me with a wonderful gift. Because Lyle has always loved me unconditionally. And I never had that. I never had that before. I had it when I met the Lord. He loved me unconditionally. But I never had a person love me. And I didn't really know what love was. I didn't know how to give it. I didn't know how to receive it. But through my walk with the Lord, and through, you know, taking better care of myself and doing the things that I needed to do to grow and to change, and I was blessed by that. And ever since then, whenever God talks to me, I always am obedient to what He tells me to do, because it always works out well. And I would like to share something with you. Um, I, like I said, had low self-esteem, never really thought much of myself. And I have learned through his word and through friends and through my husband that God loves me unconditionally. And I am his daughter and I am his princess. As you guys are his child also. So sometimes my crown gets a little cockeyed, but this is what I want to share with you that Christ says about us. Some of the things. In John, it's I am God's child. In Ephesians, I am a saint. I have been adopted as God's child. I have been redeemed and forgiven for all my sins. I am complete in Christ. In Christ, I am secure. In Romans, I am free from condemnation. I am assured that all things work together for good. I used to be the biggest worrywart ever. I worried about everything. I'm able to turn things over and just whatever. And it's so freeing. I am free from any condemning charges against me. I cannot be separated from the love of God. In 2 Corinthians, I have been established, anointed, and sealed by God. I'm a citizen of heaven. I have not been given a spirit of fear. In Hebrews, I can find grace and mercy in time of need. I am born of God, and the evil one cannot touch me. In Christ, I am significant. I'm Christ's personal witness. I'm God's temple. I am a minister of reconciliation. I am God's co-worker. I am seated with Christ in the heavenly realm. I am God's workmanship. I may approach God with freedom and confidence. In Philippians, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. The last thing I want to share with you guys is that I didn't have a very good relationship with my father. He was a hard man. He was a self-proclaimed a-hole. And that's what he'd say. He'd said that. You know, married 7 times, you know, womanizer, inappropriate with me, and he had a few children, one of which got put into the foster system when she was 3 years old. My dad was here for his father's funeral, and his wife got into a car accident while drinking, and her 2 children were taken from her. My dad couldn't find her, and she got lost in the system until she was 7. Him and his wife found her, brought her into their home, and shortly after that, my sister was sexually abused by our father for 7 years. I hated him. I despised him. But God had something else in mind. I wanted a dad so bad that I think that's part of the reason why I did some of the things I did growing up. I just wanted, you know, to be held. I just wanted to be loved. My dad ended up marrying a few more people after that. We didn't talk for many, many years. We finally got in touch, and he actually came and lived with us for a few months, or I guess about a year, after his last wife passed away from cancer. He was a hard man, but I had to realize too that my dad was raised by the same people that raised me. That his life couldn't have been easy either. And we were able to have some kind of relationship. It wasn't bad considering, but the cool thing is that God didn't leave it that way. My dad ended up having an issue getting fluid in his chest. He was living with this woman for like 5 years, and he got sick and put him in the hospital, and he couldn't breathe well, and he was very active. He played golf all the time. He'd go dancing and on cruises and everything. He was very, very active and very healthy. And so he got in the hospital. They cleared it up. He went home. It was less than a week later. He had the same issue. He went back to the hospital. This time they said, "You're going to stay here until we figure out what's going on with you." And so the doctor was out of town for like 4 days, so he stayed in the hospital, got transferred to a different hospital. And I would go see him every day. It was weird because we owned the Shores for 5 years, and like right before my dad got sick, the Shores closed, so I was open and available to go see him every day. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to. So I was there in the morning, and his girlfriend was there in the afternoon, spending time with him. Well, on a Sunday night afternoon, I went over there to see him, and God kept telling me, kept bugging me, you got to talk to him, you got to talk to him, you got to talk to him about his salvation. If something goes south here, what's going to happen? So I was like, oh, I don't want to. But, you know, I was obedient, and I told my dad, I said, Dad, you know, I don't know what's going to happen, you know, with the surgery and whatever's happening with you. I said, but do you know where you're going to go if you pass away? And he goes, I'm going to go to heaven. I think I wasn't a bad guy. And I said, well, can I tell you what I think? And I shared the gospel with him. I was surprised that he accepted Christ into his life. And the next day he had a stroke and he couldn't talk anymore. And about 4 days later he passed away at hospice. But God doesn't give up on anybody, ever. And the thing I think is the most important, if you don't know him, get to know him. He'll change your life. He'll give you things that you just can't even imagine. The peace and the joy that I'm blessed with today. I mean, I get to work in a thrift store with my friend Kim. We get to shop all day long and sell stuff and raise money for our church and minister to people, and it's like, wow, this is really fun. And he just gives us so many gifts. And I have one last song that I wanted to share with you tonight. And
One last video?
Yeah, one last video. Actually, it's not really a song. I gotta take this crown off, it hurts. But I want to thank you all for your attention, and I just